Sridhar, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Steve, super excited to be here.
Yeah. Now, in your tech career, you've been a software engineer, a technical manager, a business executive, a venture capitalist, a founder of a startup, and now, for the past few months, CEO at Snowflake. You've seen a lot from a lot of different angles. So, how does the explosion of large language models and generative AI applications stack up historically as a disruptive moment in the tech industry?
It's a great question. Um, and an honest answer is that it's a little hard to tell. I say that because, like when the internet first came along, but it was slow and it grew and then grew to dominate all our lives. I was the same with the mobile phone revolution. Um, Pretty much all of the people that I talk to and I believe that AI is a big deal because for the first time, I think we have language models that are just like really fluent in language. And that is the natural way in which we consume information, we communicate with others. Um, and it's the basis of like a lot of how humanity exchanges knowledge. So there's a lot there. So we think it's a pretty big deal. How quickly it's going to come, what's the impact that it's going to have? I think it's a little bit hard to tell. I tell people that, just like it would have been hard to imagine Uber when we first got a BlackBerry
Yeah,
or a
yeah,
flip phone,
yeah.
it's going to be a little bit hard to tell all of the things that are possible. But I feel fairly confident that there's a lot packed in here.
It's interesting. In the mid 90s, Masayoshi Son of SoftBank, used to say that the internet was underhyped. That, in fact, even though at a period of extreme hype, it's possible that AI might be underhyped.
I think that is true, especially when things go through hype cycles and you enter what's called like the trough of disillusionment. That's when it's easy to underestimate the impact of things. I agree with Masa. Also, one of like the smartest and most swashbuckling of tech investors, so he knows a thing or two about impact.
Yeah, it's also, the other thing is when people talk about AI, you'll see it in the press, it's mostly about consumer AI, but enterprise AI is something that most people don't have any clue to. And that's where a lot of the impact might be.
Yes, I think consumer adoption is where tech products basically seat themselves into the gestalt of society. But I think there's a lot more to come on the enterprise side. Spicer, who was one of the big early investors of Snowflake, in fact, thinks that AI might be the reason to start producing, humongous companies, trillion-dollar companies like Google and like Facebook. Um, I think he might be onto something when he is thinking that. I think the impact on enterprise is going to be pretty huge.
Now, Snowflake is an established leader in the data management and data analytics platform market. What role do you see the company playing in this next wave of AI innovation?
Steve, we see ourselves as a data cloud. By that, we mean absolutely we help people manage, access all kinds of different data, whether it's for analytics or for transactional purposes. But we do more. We have this amazing collaboration layer that's on top of the data layer, and increasingly applications written on top. A data cloud is, in fact, the right way to think about Snowflake. It is a cloud platform with data at its center. There's no AI strategy without a data strategy.
Yeah.
Because AI is so transformational in letting people use language fluidly to get at things that they want, including data. But more and more, AI is going to also be used to do things like access information, run SQL queries, call APIs.
Yeah.
I think of AI increasingly as the glue that's going to bind enterprise software together. So I think us being the data cloud actually sets us up to be at a really great place for them to use the power of AI to bring increased visibility, to
Yeah.
democratize the data, but also think of new kinds of applications that you and I are not really thinking about today.
We got the data cloud, the platform. We've got all these applications that are built on top of it. AI is in the applications, but it's also in the cloud, correct? It's also in the platform.
It is best to think of AI as a horizontal layer, as it
Yeah,
were,
right.
that's going to permeate everything that we do. In my own life, like, for example, I might be using AI to, of course, summarize like this news article that I saw so that I
Yeah.
can share it with my friends. I might also be using it, to generate something new, sometimes a fun thing like a cartoon, or I might be using it to feed it a CSV file. I'm not kidding you. I take CSV files, feed it into a model, and ask them questions about that model. And so when it comes to Snowflake, you're going to see AI play a big role in how data pipelines are created, how data is cleansed, how things flow into the system. It's going to be a lot easier to do migrations, for example, because language models are really good at those kinds of tasks. In addition, language models are going to be available to analysts so they can write SQL and transform data, and of course, applications, whether it's chatbots or whether it's talk to my data kind of applications. It is going to span the stack from bottom to top. That's why we don't think of it as belonging to a particular place. It's much more of like AI infusing, AI enabling everything that we do.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, you mentioned before the democratization of data. How exactly, I mean, there are several ways I would imagine that AI is going to do this. Talk about a couple of them.
So the simplest way for us to think about is using language to just interact with software, for example. Any app that's on the phone, any website that we go interact with has controls, has all of these things that we need to know exactly how to use. Language is one fluid mechanism for being able to control that. In the world of data, the way this is going to manifest itself is instead of going through a fairly elaborate process by which data is first created, and then an analyst looks at it, writes some queries to create views on this data, and then they work with a business intelligence tool in order to create some graphs. And then a task oriented thing like somebody gets emailed a report or a Slack to report, stuff like that. This cycle is often like a week long. And anytime a business person wants access to new data, for example, they have to do work. If it's not already available in a dashboard, they have to talk to the analyst and back to the week-long process. To me, the thing that's magical about AI is in a number of situations, and we have built these already and customers are trying them out, we can make it so that people can ask for what they want. They quickly get back the tabular information for that. They can ask follow-up questions, which will carry the context. And we're just months away from a world in which something like analysis, a language model can do the first two, three, four steps off, and then the human steps in. It is that fluid interaction, the follow up questions, especially of simple things, that AI models are going to enable. And this is where everybody in an enterprise can get access to the data that you and I want. I mean, like, let's face it, every Snowflake employee every now and then will be like, huh, how much vacation have I taken this year? Or, you can ask lots of little questions. Or how much revenue did my group make? Or did this feature make? And instead of going painfully through dashboards, all of this information will be accessible, of course, to the right person. Governance, security, stuff that Snowflake's good at, still important, but it is that fluid access that we think is going to explode how much people can look at data and hopefully make better decisions.
Okay, very good. Whether personal or corporate, right? So tell us about Cortex, which is Snowflake's technology for empowering its customers with large language models and generative AI.
Well, we are diving right in. Cortex, as the name indicates, we wanted it to be about the brain and thinking, and it's what AI is about. But you can think of that as our AI layer. The really important components of AI are having access to different kinds of models without having to know about complexities like GPUs and how you should provision them and what model can run on what machine, things like that, but also semantic search, which is increasingly a core component of how people think about using language models. Remember, language models by themselves can hallucinate. If you ask it a question, it'll make up an answer sometimes. But if you combine it with search, then it's much less likely that the model is going to hallucinate. So we basically took the core pieces that people need to build AI applications and put it into this layer called Cortex. Of course, Snowflake being Snowflake, this is available in SQL, in Python, in our application environment like Streamlit. It is the brain that powers AI in Snowflake.
It sounds like you see a lot of different large language models, maybe a few different kind of general ones, and then some very domain specific ones, or kind of maybe function specific ones. Is it going to be just kind of like a forest of large language models?
It will be several. I mean, just like in our kitchens, we don't think of like having one single knife. Yes, you need the cleaver, but you also need the chef's knife or the paring knife. You're going to have different kinds of models. A lot of this also comes down to cost. The big models, the ones that are really good at thinking, are also really expensive. If you want to do something simple, like let's say sentiment detection, a small model is just fine. Within Snowflake, for example, we have this amazing product called Document AI that can extract structured information from things like PDFs or image receipts. And so task specific models are very much the path for
Right.
efficiency in how people use them. We want to make all of this stuff simple. Don't get me wrong, trying to decide from anybody that's been to a restaurant with a menu that's like entirely too big knows that that's sort of a pain. That's not the goal. It's more like, let's make it really easy to use these models, and underneath we'll take care of the complexity and make sure that like the right model is used for the right task.
So are end users and businesses going to be able to kind of select the model, or are they just going to be packaged in an application by, the data scientists and things like that?
It depends on, for example, with SQL, 100% they can pick. We also try to supply, helpful defaults. The Snowflake philosophy is very much the product needs to do product. We need to do the work of managing complexity on behalf of our customers. Yes, in some cases, choice is important, but in many cases, our customers expect us to do the right thing. So, for example, for something like sentiment detection, our customers will say like, I expect Snowflake to pick the right model, the one that is the right balance between cost and accuracy, and use that model. That's where we add value. Our design philosophy, as Frank used to say, is very much like that of the iPhone. uh, just enough detail, not too much. Stuff just works out of the box. It's the thing that makes Snowflake so great for all our customers, and we're going to apply exactly that design philosophy to how we think about AI products as well.
Yeah, good, good. Hey, let's talk a little bit more about Snowflake Cortex. Customers are using it today. What kind of applications, what kind of use cases?
They span the gamut. It's going to hit GA very soon. I won't say when, but it's not that far away. Actually, likely by the time this goes live, we would have hit GA. But people are using it for simple things like data transformations, as I said, sentiment detection, summarization. But we are also seeing people build essentially chatbots. If you have a set of
Hmm.
FAQs, let me give the example of our own IT team, Sunny's team. They're building an employee assistant. Right
Yeah.
now, if let's say like, I don't know, you forgot your badge, or you forgot your laptop at home, or God forbid, you broke the screen of a laptop. You have to go to some site, you have to search through it, and then figure out what to do. Instead, you can use this assistant to ask a question. It'll give you an answer, but it'll also give you a citation so that you know that the answer is real. You can click on the citation, go to the underlying article, get more information. But these are the kinds of information applications that people are building.
Let's go back in history a bit. You were a longtime executive at Google, running one of the biggest businesses there. Then you left to co-found Neva, a company whose original mission was to reinvent consumer internet search. How did Neva morph into a pioneer of AI-assisted search?
Well, Neva was started with the abstract concept that search needed to be rethought. In 2018, 2019, we didn't really know that GPT-3 was coming and language models were coming, even though, by the way, there were tantalizing signs. In 2016, if I remember correctly, might have been early 2017, we started to see language models that were able to translate between pairs of languages that they had never been trained on. It's like magic. if you train this model on translating from English to French, and then from French to English, the model would somehow learn how to translate from English to German. And so it's like, these transitive properties, and everybody was just like, whoa, that's just like creepy and wild. So anyway, when we started Neva, we were like, we wanted to reimagine search. We thought, 20 years, there must be a better product. That's what we set out to build. So we built a search system among the hardest technical problems on the planet. But like in many other situations, you have to be opportunistic. The release, like early 2022, this is way before GPT-3 came out, like ChatGPT came out, we realized that the ability of language models to summarize information, to really be precise, this technical problem called abstractive summarization, which is a fancy way of saying read an essay and write 3 lines. Not easy for anybody. These models suddenly got really good at it. That's when it hit us. Combining language models and search was going to be the best ever search engine ever. Of course, it took us like 6-7 months to actually get this done at practice on a system that was processing 4 or 5 billion pages and serving them. But that's what we released early 23, in fact, Jan 6th, if I remember correctly, in 2023. That is really, starting on search, but being opportunistic about the opportunity that AI presented that led to Neva being what it is.
Now, Snowflake purchased Neva about a year ago, and you came on as Snowflake's head of AI. How is Snowflake combining Neva's technology with other technologies, both within and outside the company, to enhance the Snowflake Data Cloud?
First and foremost, what Snowflake got with Neva were a set of people that were really, really good at search, at using language models at massive scale, but with also the taste to figure out which model to use when, how you go about applying language models in practice. Some of this, of course, comes, as I said, from like sleepless weeks when you're trying to get something out. That's when you really learn. That was almost as important as the products we brought on. We actually shut down Neva, the consumer search engine, before the acquisition closed, because we said a consumer search engine doesn't have a future in the context of Snowflake. Right. However, the search index, that software that we created, lives in Snowflake in many places. Everything from marketplace search to when you search within Snowsight, for example, for different kinds of objects, we call it universal search. It also powers Copilot. That tech is being used very, very widely everywhere. And then, of course, language models, as I said, went into this layer called Cortex. It serves as our model garden. So the core technology and insights from the company are very much being used at a lot of different places at Snowflake. And in as much as I said, AI is like a horizontal layer, I would say we have done a pretty decent job of like permeating lots of teams.
As a writer, I love metaphors. You just said Cortex is the model garden.
Yep.
That's a winner.
It is. It is. It's sort of funny.
Explain that a little bit. Exactly what do you mean by that?
Well, the phrase model garden, us techies make up these phrases. And it's like, but a model garden is basically a collection of different models, just like a vegetable garden. You're going to grow some tomatoes and some eggplant and, and chilies. A model garden has small models, little models, image models, audio models. Right. But the idea very much is that whatever our customers want, that's going to live inside
Great.
Cortex.
Great. That makes total sense. Now, even a year ago, it seemed like a few industry players might dominate the LLM segment. Is that still true?
Right now, it appears not. Like I always say, if you're in the business of AI, you should predict early and predict often. Right now, it appears the case that lots of people, whether it is Mistral or Reka or even Snowflake itself, they're catching up to leaders like GPT-4. But we are also worried that there is like a big gain to be had from another 10x investment. Just to give you an idea, the complexity in training a model roughly grows quadratically as the size of the model. And so if you want a model that's twice as large as GPT-4, that's going to take you 4 to 6 times as much compute. So that's a pretty rough, curve to keep going up on. But we think there is at least one more round of model growth. What that is
Scale.
going to
Yeah.
yield, yeah, what that's going to yield, people don't quite know. I was talking to Jensen earlier today. He's like, Sridhar, slow thinking. I was like, Jensen, what do you mean by that? He's like, right now, all of your models are the fast thinking Twitch type. They just give you an answer. Sometimes they're wrong. But imagine what you do when you're dealing with a problem. You're going to examine 10 different possibilities and then figure out what is it that you should do. Basically, more strategic, long-term thinking. But here's the beautiful part. All of these are theories. We don't really know what's going to happen. It's been close to 20 months since GPT-4 came out. And so
Right.
there's a different school of thought that says like, models are plateaued out. But that's what makes this whole area fascinating. No one really knows.
Yeah. You wonder at some point, do models become commodities?
Only if you cannot make them any better. When does something become a commodity? Something becomes a commodity when lots of people can create them and we can make lots and lots of copies of these things. That's a commodity. Like people grow a ton of tomatoes.
Yeah.
Is it going to happen with models? We don't quite know yet.
Yeah. Well, we're at the front end of it. But having models, a commodity like having a utility, certainly that's going to be a tremendous value. Like having, dial tone, the model
Uh,
dial tone, right?
Life's not so simple, Steve. I would say it depends. If the dial tone is provided to you by one player, how does that sound? So
Okay.
that's the part
Okay.
I mean by we don't know diversity of opinion, products, competition. It's not just like motherhood and apple pie. Those things actually work for us. And so the way society has progressed is by lots of people making something, competing with each other, us getting high quality goods for very reasonable prices. And so I am not looking forward to the world in which there's like one or two players
Yeah.
that know how to make language models, because
Yeah.
that them price hikes are not that far
Yeah.
away if that happens.
I got it. I'm with you. Now, open source, a polarizing topic in the world of AI. What do you see as the role for open source LLMs?
It's a great question. Open source has traditionally been in the realm of software, where like incremental progress is possible. Meaning that some person that truly cares about sharing with the world, about a passion project, can go work on it over a weekend, and they can still like take humanity forward a little bit, but still forward. Language models, on the other hand, require a heavy upfront investment. But the butt of language models is that all of the interesting, the companies that had the skill to make big, good models stopped publishing research. Everything went underground because they're scared about, not scared, they want to preserve their competitive advantage and not let other people catch up. This also means that science does not progress. There are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of people that want to contribute to AI. And what happens is fields just die out when information dries up.
Right.
And I would say it is for that intellectual reason that LLMs are important. It means that there are millions of professors and kids all over the world that are trying to make things better, that are curious, that are tinkering, that are playing with stuff. That's why open source is important, because they advance humanity. This is why we were pretty passionate about playing a role with open source models, from Snowflake.
Yeah. Now, so there are open source models in your garden of various types, but the company released Snowflake Arctic.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So, you know, big claims, the most open enterprise grade LLM available today. And you called it a watershed moment for Snowflake. Explain why this is a watershed moment.
Building a foundation model from scratch
Yes.
is an act of endurance and accomplishment right now. Maybe a dozen companies on the planet have done that. But I
Right.
also told you that AI was a generational technology, that this was really going to impact all our lives in a significant way. So we thought it was really, really important that Snowflake have skills at doing this really well. It's a little bit like, in the early 2000s, let's say, This is when cloud computing first came to be, very different from running a bunch of servers on a box. This was running things on commodity hardware, the kind that Google and Facebook and others pioneered. And if you are anybody in tech, you're like, I know how to do this. And so language models are similarly influential. And so it was a watershed moment for Snowflake because it said, we have that capability. We can build on top. The model that we released, Arctic, it is something that we are proud of because we trained it very inexpensively, showed that it could be, it could be done in a matter of months, and did that all with a standing start. We started putting our team together in mid-December. For all of these reasons, it is a very proud moment for Snowflake. But I would also say it is a step in this journey of AI that Snowflake, the company, is undertaking. You're going to hear a lot more
Right.
about, children of Arctic at our summit.
Right, right. Now, I've read that Arctic has a mixture of experts architecture.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that mean for your customers?
Well, it's a fairly technical concept, but the
Right.
idea basically is that language models learn better when portions of their model are used to learn about different concepts. But mixture of expert doesn't mean that we have a history expert and a philosophy expert. It's much finer grained than that. But for reasons that we don't completely understand, it turns out that if you split up the token space, like every word is a token roughly,
Yes.
into many different slices, we use 128 different slices. The model somehow is able to make a better representation of the world. Compared to when you use what's called a dense model, where there's only one network that has to imagine every context of every token. It's much less compute to train it, but more memory to run the model in practice. Some of the best models that we are seeing right now are all, they're sparse or mixture of experts models, including GPT-4. This is very much at the frontier of the science in this
Right.
area.
Computer scientists have found their way to this mixture of experts architecture is through experimentation and surprises, it sounds like.
Oh, there's a lot of experimentation. For every final model run, some people have probably run multiple thousand experiments before they even, do the final run. Model runs, by the way, are stressful affairs. You basically have to commit to using a massive amount of compute in training a model, knowing that if you make a single mistake, you might have to scratch a multiple month, 3-month long process using very expensive hardware and start over. And so you try to minimize that risk. We call them ablations, by the way. It's basically holding out a concept and seeing what's the impact that is going to have in practice. And so we do a lot of, you can think of this as exploration in a very high dimensional space of figuring out what are it's a maze. It's like this crazy, multiple dimension maze. We are trying to find a pathway through the maze that leads to a good point. And so there's a lot of that work that goes before you actually train the model.
Yeah, I got it. Now I want to ask another question about Arctic. Clarify for me, is there a proprietary version and an open source Apache license version?
The Arctic model that we released is an open source model. It has an Apache 2 license, which is it's a pretty liberal license in terms of what people can use it for.
Yeah.
We don't prohibit people from using it for commercial use. For example, we are like, you can do it. But here is the important part. We also published a whole set of recipes for how to train these models.
Yeah.
Actually, having a model is like a chef at a restaurant giving you a dish. It might be tasty, but sure as hell don't know how you're going to make it yourself. What we did is we were like, yes, here's the model, but here are also a set of recipes, things that we learned often the hard way in how to go about training these models, whatever ablations that I talked about did. And it's in doing this, I think we really advance science because other people can look at this now and build on top of our learnings and hopefully make our model better. And so it's very much that collaborative spirit that we are going to have. We are training a bigger model. We will figure out, how we are going to, what we're going to do with it. we are not making a blanket promise to open source every single thing that we do. We are a company. I'm not ashamed of it. So we do have to figure out how we are going to handle future situations. But nevertheless, Arctic is an important step forward for Snowflake, but also the AI open source community as well.
Now, right at the top, we talked about this revolution that's going on in AI and how disruptive it might be. I asked you for kind of comparative things. A lot of almost everything is unknown because we're that early. But people who are business leaders and technology leaders like you probably have a better vision into the future than anybody else. So peer a couple of years into the future.
Yep.
What do you see as the one or two biggest transformative use cases for this new technology?
The simplest and most transformative use case, it is already here, is around how we consume and create information.
Right.
It's perfectly possible for you to, take an article that was sent to you, take a video that somebody shared with you, and get a summary, get a transcription. So just how we consume information has already changed in a pretty massive way. How we create information, whether it is text, or images, or even video or songs, that has also been changed in a pretty big way. In enterprise, I think the biggest impact is going to be in basically information heavy information processing jobs. Those are going to be, this includes software engineering. And I think all of these stand the potential to have significant benefit from the use of language models. I think there are also many new, software technologies, perhaps even professions that are going to get created as a result of the more generative aspects of these models. I think there's a ton of change coming.
Well, let's talk about that a little more because one can look at how AI is being used today in generating software code, and you can say, "Oh my God, software programming is going to go away." That could be one conclusion. But you just mentioned that there'll be new occupations around this. Can you give a little more color on that? What kinds of new kind of software professionals are we going to be seeing?
Well, the act of creating, for example, a new user interface for an application, that can be done much more efficiently than before. And remember, even in software engineering, there are creative things that are truly hard. Like finding a bug is hard. Yes, an AI agent can help, but a human is is pretty savvy at doing things like that. On the other hand, writing unit tests for all of the code that we write, every software engineer I know hates doing stuff like that because it's tedious, it is rote. Having help to do things like that can definitely be beneficial. Um, but in lots of other places, I think music is going to be pretty transformed. I made a rap song of our CFO, Mike
Ah,
Scarpelli. Super easy to do. You just get like one language model to write out some lyrics. I gave it some words that I wanted it to rhyme. I put it into this other tool. Out comes a song. And so lots of fun things like
yeah,
that
yeah,
are definitely possible. I think video creation is going to change
yeah.
in a big way. The cool thing about all of this is it like can unleash artistic creativity in a whole bunch of people. I tell people I'm good with words. I read, write, and talk for a living. I can't draw to save my life, but I can use words, instruct the language models, get an image. It's a lot of fun. I think it's that kind of stuff that you're going to see more and more of.
Yeah. I'm a documentary filmmaker, among other things.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how is it going to change my job, my business, my process?
Not sure, but here are some things that I can think of.
Yeah.
I think, as you know, editing is incredibly
Oh
hard.
yeah,
I
yeah,
used to
true.
edit my videos of my kids playing tennis. It would take me 2 hours to make like a highlight reel of 2 minutes, and stuff like that. Maybe driven more by instruction or even being able to transcribe what you have filmed so that it is easier to recall.
Yes.
Where it's like, hey, where is the little bit of video that had this kid in a white shirt waving
Yeah.
to me?
No.
Stuff like that becomes a lot easier to find. So I think you have more tools with which to deal with this stuff. By the way, I'm making these things as I'm, up as I'm talking to
Yeah,
you.
right,
A
right.
lot more to come.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's kind of inspiring. In a few weeks, we have Summit coming.
Yeah.
Can you hint at some of the things that are coming with some of the announcements?
Well, I won't give away stuff that I'm not supposed to. But at
Okay.
the center of Snowflake, unsurprisingly, being the data cloud, is data. You're going to hear us talk a lot more about how Snowflake can be used to access more data, how we can help people make sense of all of the data that they have. And so, that's an area that continues to get a lot of time and attention from us. Part two is how we help people collaborate. As you know, that is Snowflake's like amazing value add to so many companies, where we make partner interaction super, super easy. That's an area that's going to get a lot of love. And part
Mhm.
three is applications that are built on top. You're going to hear about a lot of partners that have bet big on Snowflake and created amazing new tech that no one at Snowflake could have imagined. So there's stuff there. And of course, lots more to come about AI and
Yeah.
what it's going to do in the enterprise, everything from new models to new product offerings and customer testimonials. So there's a lot to come at the Data Cloud Summit.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So you've been on this job for about 3 or 4 months.
Yep.
Is this the funnest job you've ever had?
This is a lot of fun. I am grateful and excited every single day when I'm at work and when I'm at home. Great set of colleagues, wonderful set of customers. I used to have a big job. Obviously, it's incomparable to my
Right.
current job before at Google. I think I was just as impatient, just as driven, but also so impatient and so driven that I didn't quite like relish just being there. I tell people that I'm way more grateful this time around to be in a job like this. Yes, I'm driven. Yes, I'm pushy. Yes, I want to get lots of stuff done, but I'm also just grateful for the opportunity to work with all the amazing people around me, and of course talk to so many of our amazing customers.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I popped in a few extra questions, and you handled them very well. So thank you so much.
So I am so excited that all of us are going to be at the Data Cloud Summit. I think you're going to see a ton of Snowflake customers, partners, employees. It's going to be quite the party. I hope to see you all there.